Good morning, and thanks for joining us. We continue to follow breaking news. O.J. Simpson, former football star and accused double murderer, has died. His family posted the news on social media saying he died of cancer yesterday, surrounded by his children and grandchildren. Once a beloved Hall of Fame athlete, Simpson's success was overshadowed by allegations he killed his wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend, Ron Goldman, in 1994. After a trial that captured the attention of the world, he was acquitted but found liable in the deaths in the civil trial 3 years later. In 2008, Simpson was sentenced to 33 years in prison for armed robbery and kidnapping. He was paroled in 2017. Simpson was 76 years old. And with a look back at his controversial life, we are joined live now by film critic Richard Krause. Richard, thanks so much for joining us. I'm sure it's difficult to sum up O.J. Simpson's legacy, somebody who went from being a decorated athlete to a presumed killer.
Yeah, this is something that is so grand in its scope, the life and career of O.J. Simpson, that it's hard to kind of sum up quickly. But in the 1970s, and even before that, when he was a Heisman Trophy Award winner, but when he was a professional athlete, he was a superstar. There's no other word to use to describe it. He was handsome. He was charismatic. He always had a one-liner. He was up there in the likes of Muhammad Ali, Joe Namath, people that were very comfortable being on camera and very comfortable being themselves and projecting their personality. And it made him a superstar. He branched off into movies and made some credible movies that made a lot of money. I don't know that he was ever going to win an Oscar, but movies like The Towering Inferno and Capricorn 1 and films like that. And then led, a very high-profile life once playing for the Buffalo Bills, and his professional career was over until June of 1994, when the defining moment of his life happened, the murders that eventually turned into what they called the trial of the century at the time. And this is the Shakespearean fall from grace for someone who had been a hero to so many people, someone that people looked up to, and all of a sudden there he is on trial. But the interesting thing about the trial is that it became, I think, less about the murder victims and more about the pop culture aspects of it. On the Jay Leno show, they had the Dancing Itos, which was a joke about the judge of the trial, Lance Ito, and the Dancing Itos would come out and do a dance to a song about the trial or something that had been said at the trial. Catchphrases like if the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit came out of there. People like Kato Kalin and Marcia Clark and Johnny Cochran became household names. And so it became more about the spectacle of the trial than it actually was about the trial itself. And then when he was declared not guilty, I will never forget the look on Dominic Dunn's face. Dominic Dunn was a writer for Vanity Fair, whose daughter had been murdered in her own driveway some years before. So he had what he wrote about, a personal connection to this, or he felt very, very strongly about this. And he was convinced that O.J. was going to get a guilty verdict. And when it didn't happen, the look on his face, his jaw literally hit the floor when it happened. And it's something that I will never forget at the end of this very long trial that so many people watched religiously.
Absolutely. And I think you said it so well, that trial, it really became an integral part of our pop culture and something that people are still talking about today, all these decades later. As you noted, before 1994, O.J. Simpson was well regarded by the public. He was loved by so many, as you said, an athlete, a football superstar. Then the murders happened, Richard, the trial, and then everything changed. Can you talk about that change, that shift in public perception as well?
Well, interesting to see this shift in public perception, because O.J. had his supporters during the trial and afterwards. But it was kind of interesting as a case study, I suppose, to watch O.J. Simpson's post-trial career, because he had been, as we just talked about, someone who was charismatic, someone who was used to being on television, someone who was used to not only from his athletic ability, but just from his personality personality, was used to being kind of in the spotlight. And when that all changed after the murder trial, even though he was not convicted, he was pronounced not guilty. I think he thought he could just step back into the public spotlight and it would be as if all this had been washed away. But that didn't happen. And even though, as recently as 2006, he tried to create a television show based around himself. It was like a punked style prank show called Juiced. And that was his nickname. Juice was his nickname. And he would play pranks on people, but a lot of them were kind of odd. If you think back to just before the trial, just before his arrest in the murders, there was the white Bronco chase. And so during this show, Juiced, they tried to sell the white Bronco, and it had a bullet hole in its windshield, and he had autographed around the bullet hole and told the prospective buyer, if you're ever in trouble, this is the way you get out of trouble, and you just drive away from whoever is after you. So, he was kind of playing on the notoriety that came from the trial as much as his personality and everything else that went along with being O.J. Simpson.
Richard, this is a complicated story to tell. Even in our newsroom, we were having discussions about how to cover this. Yep. It's a complicated story, a complicated legacy. What do you think O.J. Simpson's legacy will ultimately be?
I think that the football achievements are in the past now. They're so long in the past. He started playing professionally in 1972, and even though he was the first NFL player to rush 2,000 yards, and he was an MVP player before that, a Heisman Trophy Award winner, I think when you hear the name O.J. Simpson, you immediately think about the trial. You immediately think about the white Bronco. And I think as people look back when they hear that name today, those are the first images that will flash through their minds, even though before that, he had lived at the center of popular culture with his car commercials that were so famous, him running through an airport and jumping over chairs and that sort of thing to get to the car rental place. Very, very famous ad, but it was a different time. Now we get our information so differently. We're so splintered that we don't have the concept of someone who is just that huge. Maybe Taylor Swift. But O.J. Simpson was a very, very big star who had a very big fall from grace, and I think that is how he'll be remembered.
Okay. Film critic Richard Krause, thanks so much for your time. We appreciate this.